Millwall is a club with a really distinct heritage, and always had. And like I said, I went to school not far from here, so I know the club pretty well. How do you kind of maintain that identity that goes back forever while trying to modernise the club and take on those additional things you want to do, like the real estate stuff that you talked about?
Yeah, a lot of it is just being understanding of kind of who we are and our history and our heritage, because that should never be taken for granted. And you see clubs do make that mistake and just go kind of, well, we're going to go with these singing this, our tifos coming from the ceiling. We're going to change our badge
this year.
And actually, that's not the right thing. I think what we've done this year, we've obviously been a lot of modernisation of our facilities, but Doherty is our kind of one of our main new hospitality spaces. That's all linked to our history and heritage, and that's so important, and it's something we should never take for granted. And it's something that, if you've got a 8-year-old fan, may not know any of these guys, but it's an important part to understand, because actually in 50, 60 years they'll be talking to their grandkids about these sorts of players, and it may be before their generation, but it's such an important thing that you keep linking those in and linking into what it is for where we are now when we're in New Cross, and obviously our history and heritage.
But you hold a record in the Prem. What record do you hold?
Most consecutive games, I believe. That is from Blackburn when Mark Hughes was the manager into Aston Villa, and then through to Tottenham. So it's just one of those things, Seb. But as you go through your career, it's not like an FA Cup trophy or a League Cup trophy or winning the Premier League or something. It's not one of those achievements that I didn't even know about it, really, to be honest with you, until someone said, when I was at Blackburn, you've just broken the record at Blackburn, and just for that club in general. And then I was the oldest player to be playing for Blackburn at one stage, and then, or maybe the second oldest. And then I went to Villa and I was the oldest player there. And then they had said I had broken maybe Frank Lampard's record for consecutive games. And I think it was David James, etc. And I guess I notice it more now when I'm retired than when I was playing, because me, you were in the changing room with me. I turn up, I have a good laugh with the players, I work hard, I kept myself fit, and hopefully my performances allowed the manager to call on me to play.
In those years when you were playing, was the young Gary already a manager in his head?
I don't know if quite a manager, but I was always interested. I was always interested in the coaching side of things. I liked to pay attention to how coaches spoke, whether that was on the training ground, on the training pitches, or that was in team meetings, or that was at half-time talks or full-time talks. I was always interested. And I think because I was a captain and sort of had those leadership skills, I guess that's why I paid more attention to what their managers were saying, which is a good thing. I'm sure managers appreciate that someone's listening, because they're not always listening. But
yes,
I kind of always just I think people talk a lot about leadership, but I think it can be taught, leadership for sure. But I think outward leadership, so vocal leadership, is either in you or it isn't. I think there's two types of leaders. There's ones that lead by being vocal, and there's other ones that lead by example. So I think I was more a vocal leader, an organizer. I enjoyed that side of it anyway. And then being a defender, as you know, is that you have to be an organizer. You have to have the right people around you and get them in the right places, so you don't have to defend as much. That was what I thought my job was.
Can you tell us what moment shaped you as a player?
Cool. That is a question. I mean, my background was completely different to most footballers' backgrounds. Most footballers' backgrounds is they excel at school, which I did do, as most of us footballers did, and then come the school leaving age of 16, you sign apprenticeship forms. That's what they were called them days, 2-year apprenticeship, and then that's the start of your career. For me, my pathway was different. When I was 16, they didn't think that I was good enough, but I thought I could still develop. So at 16, they wanted me to stay on very much on an amateur basis, still training 2 nights a week and playing for the youth team on a Saturday, but they didn't offer me any professional forms. So I embarked on a 4-year apprenticeship as an engineer, as a lift engineer. Thankfully for me, when I finished that, I then signed full-time professional at Tottenham, and I was lucky to get into the team straight away.
For those that aren't familiar with Redditch, how would you describe Redditch United? Maybe not in one line, but a brief description of the club on and maybe off the pitch from a community perspective.
Exactly that. The word that we use all the way through is community. I think that was we are very much a community-based club. A lot of clubs will say that, but I think for us, it's very much part of what we're trying to do. Because if you're looking at running a football club at the moment sustainably, and there's not many football clubs out there that are trying to do that.
No.
But we very much are. I'm not a multimillionaire. We're trying to run it sustainably, and so the mission statement for us for the last few years is purely to grow our community footprint.
You touched on, your kind of early experiences. What triggered your love for football? Is it a family thing? Is it parents? What was that from an early age? Do you remember when you first thought, wow, I love this game and this is where I want to be?
I know exactly. It was because of the World Cup in Spain in 1982. I was 5 years old, and my dad was never a football fan, like, hardcore, following a club, going to the stadium, owning, shirts or anything. But every time, that was also a time where football was totally for free on air television.
Yeah.
So, and we had in Chile, we had like 3 channels, and that was it. No cable at the moment. So, but you always had, the Chilean teams and Copa Libertadores, which is like the Champions League in South America, and all the national team competitions and everything. So it was very easy to see football. So my family in general, they used to watch football, and my father used to watch football on TV. And Chile went to Spain 82.
Yeah.
And there was a moment where a very famous player, Carlos Caselli, one of the greatest strikers in South America of all time, he missed the penalty. And he missed that penalty, and everything I could hear of, everything I listened, was the only word I could listen everywhere, and I could read, because at 5 years old, I could already read, was penal, which is penalty.
Yeah.
The penalty that Caselli missed. And then I wanted to know, what the heck is a penalty? Why everyone is talking about it? I've always been very curious.
The role that you played, even in that cup final, is almost what you've been doing after football. You know what I'm saying? It means that impacting. You had to get people out of trouble after everything that you've been through. You almost felt like a mission. You were on a mission. So can you obviously talk publicly?
Yeah, I think I understand. I understand totally what you're saying, and I think that was part of what happened to me as a child. That became part of my makeup, if you will. I had to, and was always in having to survive mode, having to take care of people at such a young age when I shouldn't, have to deal with things at such a young age when you shouldn't have to. And what that gives you is a mental, I think, resilience, Seb, to be able to face adversity and look it in the face, and somehow, and that's why I say somehow, find a way to survive that.
How did you feel when you had to hang up the gloves?
I'm relieved, to be honest with you. Yeah, no, it was. I was really fortunate that I was one of the few players that was sort of able to call time on my own career. Like the last 4 years of my career, I have a really good relationship with Daniel Levy because of this. He said, we'll give you a 2-year contract. You'll play the first year. then we're going to be looking for a long-term number one that's younger, which is normal. I was 40 years old.
Hugo.
And and Hugo came in on the last day of the transfer window, if you remember. But that was a different story because AVB and Daniel weren't seeing eye to eye on that. But anyways, like I knew every step of the way that was going on. And for that, then I was able to do my UEFA B, my UEFA A, and my pro license at Tottenham. That was our agreement. Because I was so fit, they kept giving me first team contracts as well. So I did 4 first team contracts there. So like my mind after the second season was already morphing into after football. You know, I mean, it was 42 turning 43, then 43 turning 44. I knew it was coming to the end. So I played with, and so did you, Seb. We played with a lot of players that had to end in their 20s because of injury and things of that nature. I think psychologically, it's much more difficult to deal with that than planning 4 years out before the final day. And I was actually given the opportunity to stay even one more year as a player.
But I think, and you tell me what you think, that meniscus, when it's not treated properly, or I don't know, the rehab is not perfect, can be make more damage than an ACL.
Oh yes, for me the big difference is that if you have an ACL, particularly, and if I think of your era of playing, I think it was the case then. Now even more so. I think you can have an ACL replacement and you're back to new, you know, and players come back from that, and you know there are not that much difference. I think that the problem with a meniscus, it just keeps chipping away. So, and I think people can see that difference, even though, you know, potentially you feel okay yourself. You know, people can see, you know, that your levels are not what they were. So certainly that had effect on my thinking of post-playing.
You touched on the kind of early start or the start of your career, and you know, abuse from even colleagues and the reception to you as a female broadcast journalist in football. And I can only imagine how difficult that was. You've covered football now, fast forward, you know, a few years, you've covered football across all continents and been involved in some amazing games and tournaments. How have you seen things change down the years? And I'm assuming there's still, you know, lots of work to do, but how have you seen things change during your career?
Well, now I see that it's a lot. The presence of women in football is a lot more accepted. We're still underestimated. We're still looked down upon. We're still abused. But I don't think it's at the same level that it was 15 years ago. It's very slowly but surely improving. I also noticed it myself, like how it was at first when I just started, like the first year, and then 4 years later, you know, it was, you know, I could see it in the level of reactions on my phone. It's like, okay, so there's something that makes them see my presence as a normal thing, which is my goal.
When people talk about Millwall's reputation, what's the one thing they get wrong?
Oh, well, I think we know.
If there was one thing.
We know. I mean, it's the misconception around Millwall of the 70s and 80s that people hark back to. And look, we know that has been and gone. It's one that I've had friends and I've had contacts come, and I've brought them here and said, come and see what we do. Come and see what the Community Trust does. Come and see a match day. And what you'll see is a brilliant place.
Yeah.
I mean, match days here are fantastic. When the place is full, when the noise level's right up there. I brought a load of friends from university to the Portsmouth game last year, and I mean, they loved it. I mean, they spent like far too long in the club shop afterwards, but that's a good sign, because they fell in love with the place, because actually the atmosphere was brilliant. We won, which always helps. But the place was full, the place was rocking, and actually they get to see what we do in the community. They took them around to the Community Trust, so they see the work we were doing beforehand, and that was obviously as part of the family fun zone. But it's a big part of what we do, having areas that on a match day people can come, there's somewhere for the kids to go, there's the fan zone as well. So it's trying to basically be everything to everyone, which is difficult, but it's doing it our way.
So basically, when did you start thinking like a manager?
Well, it wasn't until the end of that season. So those 13 games, I ended up week by week, kept it, like I said before, kept asking, when's the next guy coming in? Because we kept getting some good results, I'm getting away and finished quite comfortably. I guess they were thinking, okay, maybe we'll leave it to the end of the season to have a look and see if we can bring someone in. So I was only at the end of that season and it had gone really well. In my mind at that point, I was thinking I've got 1 year left on my playing contract. I knew the academy manager's role had come up. I was kind of thinking, right, maybe I do that. Or like I said before, go and play somewhere for 2 years. What I thought I had left, try and get a contract elsewhere. But the owner come to me at the end of the season and just said, look, Gary, he said, you've done incredibly well in these 13 games. If you want the job, we won't look for anyone else. So my first thought was, oh, shit, to be honest.
This is real now.
Yeah, I thought, oh, shit, because I wasn't thinking like that at all. I was interested and I was thinking of coaching, but I always thought my route would be, go into the academy, like earn your stripes in your academy and then maybe move up to the first team. And again, not maybe manager, but maybe assistant coach or something like that. I always thought that might be my path at that club.
You talked a lot about stuff you had to react to, boiler problems, issues with damp and things like that, which are always a nightmare. Has that put on hold any plans that you've got to add to the facilities now? Obviously, you've just made a huge investment in the pitch and the dugouts and things like that. Is there anything else on the horizon that the attendees can look forward to?
Yeah, I mean, we're all guilty. You look at any non-league ground, especially, you can blue sky think and I'd do this and I'd build that and I'd do that. And it's quite, when you start explaining these things, you're like, yeah, but we've just sat here and pondered and spent £2 million. The actual cost of some of these things is
it's easy.
Ridiculous. Yeah. I think that the one thing I'd say now is, and again, I've got to be really careful how I say this and when I say this to make sure I explain it fully, but the football now in our club has become more important. So at the time when I took the club on, there was other issues that needed to be addressed. So we had to grow revenue streams.
As you said, what happened to you? How did that impact what you're doing now after football? How did that shape, your mission, your purpose into the business that you've done after football?
I think Seb was I never intended when I finished football, and you know what it was like for us once the game comes to an end, you're not really prepared for it. I wasn't. There was nothing in the game, nobody in the game. There were no sort of facilities to help you with that crossover from playing football, where we live in a bubble, where everything's done for us, to going out into the real world and actually understanding that football is a different scenario, and I didn't really expect to be telling my story. And I always say I'd managed to survive again that exit from football, the issues that you have when the football's no longer there, and then move on, and thought that my life was then going to be just run out in as normal as possible. And then that day in 2016 when I decided to speak just changed everything.
How do you manage how do you balance the expectations of the fans with the financial responsibilities of running the club and ensuring of that long-term stability?
I think it helps when you've got a clear plan and direction, and that's what we've got, obviously, with the board, especially with the owner. We know how we're going to be successful, we know how we're going to build for success, and it's going to be on a sustainable basis. Mm-hmm. So we know how we're going to operate over the next 3, 5, even 10 years. That's really good, and I think the fans, and a lot of them, understand that. What you see like most people, I spend far too long on the train reading Twitter sometimes, and then you see kind of the extremes of opinions. We should be spending X on this. We should be doing.
Everyone's
this.
An expert, right?
Everyone's an expert, and actually some of them probably better than I am. Probably most of them, unfortunately. But no, for us, it's all about. We know where we need to get to, and we know how we're going to get there. And things may come. Challenges either way, so it could be a positive challenge, a negative challenge, but it's a case of once you've got a clear plan, you can correct that and you can address it and you can actually deal with that as it comes along. And I think that's the right way to be. And I think also the fans understand, especially with the Berylson family, how ingrained they are into the club and how much they've supported the club when during difficult times, as well as obviously times where we've been kind of riding the crest of a wave. So that's really important, and I think we saw it obviously when you hear press talk and people do get carried away thinking, oh, we're going to have billions to spend. And is it always the right way? And I've been through clubs that have been through boom and bust, and it's great for a short period, but actually I think most people would rather see progression continuously. And I think as long as people see progression, then we're on the right track.
Yeah.
Where did you get that from? Was it Gary the player, or Gary that had new idea as a manager? I want to know tactically where the inspiration come from.
It started in 2008 with Roberto Martinez, that style of play. He came in when we were in League One, and we did our first pre-season in Spain, and we played all the Spanish teams that play this way, and it was a big eye-opener for us. We were like getting beaten all the way through pre-season. We were getting proper beaten. But what we didn't know at the time, where we were losing games and getting absolutely thrashed by these teams that could keep the ball for fun, was Roberto knew that we had players in the squad capable of doing it. So he implemented that first belief in doing it, and going through that experience and then coming through League One and then the Championship was where we were building that style over a number of years, probably 3 years of that style and that sort of way of playing, and then into Brendan Rodgers when we finally got promoted to the Premier League. But what a lot of people don't know is when we arrived in the Premier League is we had spent the last 3 years making all the mistakes that we needed to make. So that when we arrived in the Premier League with that style of play, is we were ready. And that was our edge, because we were against much more powerful teams than us in terms of squads. But if you remember, around that time, 2011, 2012, it wasn't like now. There wasn't lots of teams in the Premier League playing possession football.
That's what I'm saying.
So that was our edge. Our edge is we know we're good at that.
What does a typical match day, if there is a typical match day, at Redditch look like for, in terms of attendance? What's the atmosphere like for the fans? And have you got any plans to improve on that this season or next in terms of the match day experience?
Yeah, I mean, the match day experience is, I think look at clubs at our level, the ground is probably one of the more impressive ones. There's a big, the main stand I'm sat in now was built in the 70s. It's a good traditional, non-league big stand, function rooms at the top with a great view of the pitch.
Love that. Yeah.
So like we're quite fortunate in that respect. I think with the match day experience for me, it's the little things, and again, these are all things that have had to be done the last few years to get us to where we are. But the turnstiles are making sure the queues are right and the ticket system's effective, making sure the outlets, don't have massive queues and that the products are good from the kitchen and the bar. We spent a lot of money on PA systems go around the ground and inside the rooms, so you can try and create a better atmosphere. I suppose one of the positives and negatives for the ground at the moment, it's very big, it's very open.
How do you assess nowadays, mental health, safeguarding regarding the youngsters? How do you assess the whole industry?
I think we've come on massive strides, Seb, and you said something then that I relate to. For me, as a child, when I was going through what I was going through, that football was the escape. It was the only place I felt safe. So when I was on that football pitch, I realised no one could hurt me. No one could do anything to me. So I relate to it being an escape. I think that we need to recognise more that players are vulnerable.
Is there a standout moment from your career so far that kind of defines you and says that's why I wanted to do this, that's why I love this?
It's probably when you feel that no one values you, you feel that you don't have all the recognition you would like to have at this point in your career, but then you receive the message of a journalism student, especially a female one, saying that they followed your career or they know about you and they would like some kind of advice. and or when they tell you that my journey has inspired them to keep going or something like that. I usually get those kinds of messages on social media, whether it's on LinkedIn or Instagram, and I always try to help them because I know how it might feel. And if I can make things a little bit simpler for them than it was for me, then my job is also done there.
But what is the main difference between when you're in a championship? You talk about Norwich, but at Brighton, for example, or Newcastle, talk about Newcastle, but Brighton. How different was it in terms of business of football?
I think the biggest difference is that obviously, as we all know, there's a lot of work done behind the scenes. So I think the biggest difference, I think, is the speed. I think the speed of contracts and how quickly they're done quicker. I wouldn't say because it's not every case, but I think that's also a lot of, because there are so many people involved now, and obviously as the club grows bigger. So if I look at my time at Brighton, when I went to Brighton, we were in the bottom three of the championship, but it never felt like a club that should be there.
Yeah.
I think it had just been a difficult season. The recruitment the summer before hadn't worked so well, but it never felt that way because I walked into a magnificent training ground, an owner that had invested millions, an incredibly bright man. So you always thought it was going to turn. And it could turn quite quickly.
Now you are in the executive roles and you you have different venture. Talk to me about how does it feel to be in the business of football? Because there's the art of what I call the art of football when you do play. You had your venture, outside venture, but when you are in the coaching side or in the executive role, how does it feel? What is it about? Yeah, tell me everything about it.
There's different feelings. So, like when you're in the coaching role, when when the game starts, you're not helpless. There's things you can do tactically and whatever and motivationally, but you are beholden to how the players perform on the pitch. When you're in the executive roles and you need to try to create financing or create larger revenue streams or something like that, so the team can be more competitive on the pitch. They're different kind of buzzes. I would say what I like most is in the sporting director stroke technical director stroke advising role, because you have a say, not say is the wrong word. You have more of a controlling interest on trying to fix the areas of a football club from a football perspective that aren't working. And then what I like to do is go with my ideas to the financing guys, the CFOs and whatnot, and say, hey, this is really how it should work from a football standpoint. Can we do this financially? And if we can't, what do we need to be able to do it? I really enjoy that side of things because you have a little bit more control over it.
Put it this way: if you could design a better transition system for players leaving football, what would it include? Tough one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a tough one because each player's an individual, as you know. Seb, you've been in the changing room with 14, 15 lads, and their needs are so much more different. What I would do, I would use ex-players more that have had experiences, that have had and been through experiences and come through experiences, and probably train them to become almost like the social workers. I know we have player caring clubs now, but I'm not so sure, and I don't know whether you agree. You might not, but I always think a player can relate to another player because they know that we know what it's like to achieve that standard.
What do you see as the biggest drivers of the women's game right now?
Visibility, by far. Visibility, it's probably the most important one. Yeah, I might have been someone like the weirdo, in my time, because I didn't have any kind of visibility regarding women in football. But now, the thing that drives it the most is visibility, and with visibility, comes interest. Because if you don't show it, how on earth people are going to know about it? They get interest in it. So I would say that, and then of course, with interest, with visibility and interest comes money, investment, sponsorship.
Yeah.
So it's a chain. It's an inevitable chain.
Again, I'm going to make another big statement here. I think I'm right in saying Redditch United have got the biggest company sponsoring our club than anyone else in the world. That's a big statement, that, isn't it?
Really?
So
It's a huge statement.
our front of shirt sponsor is Reddit. So Reddit is the 6th biggest website in the world.
Yeah.
Huge social media company. They came on board 18 months ago, and basically it was a play on the Redditch. And
makes sense.
It all went back to a comment that was made on the Reddit platform. I think it was like 15 years ago, about the link between the two. Our current MD, Ian, who was actually head of commercial at West Bromwell in the Premier League. So that's the level of the staffing that we're looking at now.
Yeah, very good.
Conversations happened, and we managed to put a deal together.
Where's the main difference? Not in terms of the way you manage these players, it's football, but in terms of business, what did you really learn, to be honest? You thought, you know what? I never expected it to be like that in terms of the way the business is run.
Are you talking about in my time in Ghana? In Ghana? Oh,
because you had two roles. You were an advisor first.
Yeah.
You came in, you tiptoe, and then you had the main role. So yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
The difference. So I'll speak firstly about the technical difference of being a coach in Ghana. So firstly, it's international football. So for what you would have in the day-to-day workings at club level, training during the week, picking a team, playing on a Saturday, recover, continue. So your connection with the players is daily, even if you're not speaking to one individual, but the contact you have with the players is daily. Of course, the big difference is that you don't have that at international level.
So how would you describe your way to do things in your own words?
Yeah, I think it's changed over time. I think the romantic, we're all romantic about football. Like we all got in our minds to put our, it all may be different, like you may be different to me or whatever it is, but in our minds, we know like the perfect way we'd love to see one of our teams play football. And then we start with that passion and that romanticness, and then apart from the very, very top managers that maybe can have their pick of the players that fit into those systems and play that way, I think for the majority of coaches, you quickly understand that romantic way is very difficult, very, very difficult. And then the battle comes of, okay, do I stick to that romantic view of this is my way and I'm only going to do this way and I'm going to make it work, or do I become adaptable? Do I have to change my way? And I think we're caught. It's very interesting. I had this conversation the other day where I think because of Pep, Pep's amazing. Like what he's done for football is absolutely amazing. But what we have to understand is Pep's doing that at the highest of levels.
Oh, thank you.
And he's doing it with the highest level of players. And even though that's still incredibly difficult, that's what he's doing. That's how it functions.
Hey, Seb, can I add one more thing? That's
Of course
really,
you can.
really important for people going into business after football. And I've learned this. I learned this with somebody flat out telling me, and then after he told me, I've seen it happen. the big business guys, successful businessmen and women out there, they only care about your playing career for a split second to get you in the door to the meeting, or it allows you to get in there. Once you're in there, your playing career is absolutely irrelevant to the business people. Maybe someone's in there that wants to take a picture with you because they have a son or a daughter or a family member or husband or wife or somebody who supports the club you played for. But they don't respect you as a business person until you prove that you can be a business person.
And jump into the future again. What excites you most about Millwall's future?
I think it's this place. It's great. I mean, we know what we want to achieve here in terms of, obviously, this place is going to look very different in 5 years, 10 years time.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things, as I suppose from a pride point of view, from a career point of view, when I leave here, whatever, 5, 10, 20, 30 years time, and it's like, well, we've left it in a much better place.
Yeah.
We've got different, obviously, real estate income streams coming in. We're actually able to compete toe-to-toe with the best in the league, or whichever league we're competing in.
Yeah.
I think that's where you go, actually, I feel like it's job done.